Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. On the show tonight, after 24 years, Secretary of State Jesse White is handing off the baton. We hear from two Democratic candidates vying to fill his post.
Blood shortage is such a big problem.
Pressure for a change in the rules of who can donate blood. That and more in the effort to increase supply following a severe shortage.
Temperatures are rising, but Park District pools still aren't open. We look at the city's lifeguard shortage.
How does the police department hold up when it comes to COVID-19 vaccinations? We share new WTTW news findings.
A shortage of feminine hygiene products is being felt across the country. How organizations are coping.
And the fight to recognize Juneteenth as an official holiday and why advocates say it's only the beginning. But first, some of today's top stories. Former Vice President Mike Pence was in Chicago today calling for a, quote, change in direction to combat the country's economic problems. Speaking at the University Club of Chicago, Pence railed against President Joe Biden's handling of the economy.
Unlike the Great Depression in the 1930s, the stagflation of the 1970s, or even the Great Recession of 2008, the economic woes now upon us have been caused almost single-handedly by one person, the 46th President of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Mayor Lori Lightfoot is tapping Monique Scott to fill a 24th Ward City Council seat left vacant by the resignation of Scott's brother. Lightfoot announced her decision in a statement that made no mention of Monique Scott's connection to the now former Alderman Michael Scott Jr., who was one of Lightfoot's most reliable allies in City Council. Alderman Scott announced his surprising retirement from the council last month and has since joined Cinespace Studios. Monique Scott has worked for the Chicago Park District since 2014. She was one of 19 people who applied to fill the position. A final vote on her nomination is expected at the full City Council meeting Wednesday. Elected officials and community members spent the morning celebrating the Juneteenth holiday at Kenwood Academy High School. The holiday recognizes June 19th, 1865. That's when the last enslaved people in Galveston, Texas were freed. At today's rally, organized by Cook County Commissioner Bill Lowry, Governor J.B. Pritzker pointed out that Illinois made Juneteenth a state holiday before the federal holiday was mandated. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton reflected on her own rise to political leadership and her ancestors.
I am proud to serve as Illinois' first black lieutenant governor. But every single day, I am also proud to be the great-great-granddaughter of William and Margaret Stevens of Sunflower County, Mississippi, who lived under the brutality of slavery until President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation.
And up next, hear from two of the Democrats vying to be the state's next Secretary of State. Stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabee family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
The Illinois Secretary of State's office is the government agency that perhaps has the most interaction with Illinoisans on a day-to-day basis. Most of us have been in a driver services facility getting a license renewal or auto title, but the office manages 4,000 employees and carries out other important functions like managing the disclosure of state lobbyists and the registration of all entities doing business in the state. The post has been held for 24 years by the popular Jesse White, who is retiring at the end of this, his 6th term in office. And last week we featured two Republicans vying for the post, and tonight some of the Democratic primary contenders. Joining us are City Clerk of Chicago, Ana Valencia, and 17th Ward Chicago Alderman David Moore. We also invited candidate and former State Treasurer Alexi Janulius. He initially accepted our invitation and then later canceled. Also on the ballot is Sidney Moore, and you can read more about him at WTTW.com/voter guide. But we do thank both of you for being here. Clerk Valencia, I want to start with you and the question on every motorist's mind. What will you do to manage the occasional long lines and wait times at the Motor Services Facility, also known as the DMV?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Well, as the city clerk of Chicago, I've done a lot of work in my office during the modernization project. We know that because of the pandemic, there has been a lot of technology upgrades that we're going to need in our office. So I have the experience of doing that at the city clerk's office, going to an e-commerce platform, looking at e-forms, modernizing the city council where our aldermen, for their first time in Chicago history, can vote online. So I want to take this experience and build upon Secretary White's legacy and foundation that he's built. I'm so proud to have Secretary White's endorsement. And so we've already been brainstorming on what I can actually do as I take office to build on top of that empire he's built. So looking at things like a one-stop shop portal where you could look at e-forms, paying online, renewing your, not only just your license and your car vehicle, but also registering a business at a one-stop shop. I also want to look at flexible hours, offering Saturday hours or even evening hours. We've done this during my Mobile City Hall feature. We had a Saturday offered just last month in North Lawndale on the west side of Chicago. So if we can offer more flexible hours, then parents don't have to take time off work, find childcare, transportation. So I'm looking forward to putting this whole plan together and even more have the experience to bring it to life.
Alderman Moore, what about you? How do you speed up some of the wait times and modernize that office?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, and thank you for having me tonight. One of the things, I have a dual degree in accounting and operations management. I spent 10 years in the private sector working for Fortune 500 companies like Ralston Purina, the Clorox company, and Avery Dennison Corporation. And when you start talking about technology and you start paralleling to your other systems, those things take time. And that's why I'm the first in this race to talk about digital license plates as an option to keep people out of line. Digital license plates right now are being used by California, Arizona, and Michigan as an option. And what it does is serve three primary purposes. One, with this epidemic that we're in right now, it serves as a safety mechanism. If your car is carjacked or stolen, that digital license plate can immediately flash stolen and the person can get apprehended and held accountable. But also it serves as a deterrent to keep people from carjacking. Now, when we're talking about the office and in line, now that's 3 times. You don't even have to go into the office, but from the digital platform, you can do your registering, your titling, and your renewal from the digital platform. And then for people who are like my mother who's saying, I'm not using any technology at all, as the state librarian, I'm the first one in this race to say, I'm going to use our libraries as satellite offices and community connectors where you can come in and do those quick things like renewal, registration, and titling without having to go to the main facilities. And that way you can reduce lines.
All right, so a lot of ideas here for digitizing and modernizing the office. I want to talk about fatalities, not only from car accidents, Clerk Valencia, but we've seen a rash of deaths in the city for pedestrians and cyclists hit by motorists. Is there anything the Secretary of State's office can do to ensure safer roads for everybody that uses the road?
Yes, I want to start an advisory council and working with groups like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and other safety groups to look at what we can do to increase our safety, our road safety. I think grassroots from the bottom up, not the top down policy is the best way to do it in a collaborative way, because I am not the expert. There are so many people out there, our ordinary residents, that they're experts that have been working on this for years. So that is going to be a priority to me to look at road safety and take those recommendations. I also want to create a civics corps, a youth paid jobs program that allows our students to learn how to be civically engaged in their communities, register voters in their own communities, but learn how to be empowered and take initiative. I want our youth to be at the table when we're making decisions on what road safety looks like. We haven't even tapped into what it looks like at road safety on policies with marijuana. Now that's legalized here in Illinois. That's something we also have to tackle as well. Drunk driving, which has also increased since the pandemic. We need to look at that, what we're doing to get more tough on some of those folks that are repeat offenders, making sure that our software technology is upgraded so we can, use information to all 102 counties more seamlessly and efficiently so we know who those folks are and can go after them and suspend their driver's license. So there's a lot of different things we want to do. We want to start with this advisory council first and then build out different policies from the communities. All
right, Alderman Moore, we mentioned briefly traffic fatalities. It's gone up in the last 3 years from around 1,000 fatalities in 2019 on Illinois roads to 1,300 in 2021. How can the state bring that down, and would you consider things like stiffer penalties for DUIs?
Absolutely, but before you get to even the stiffer penalties, you have to focus on communication and information. You have to run a campaign and let people know how important it is not to text. You have to make sure our young people that we're getting in our schools and teaching them and showing them that texting is the equivalent to drinking 2 times of the limit. There are studies that show that. And so the more we educate, not only our young people, we educate adults who text as well, that's very important that we do that. So running that campaign is critical. As an alderman, I've been a supporter of Vision Zero, a program by CDOT, making sure that we have walkable spaces and spaces where bikers can safely ride their bikes. But as the Secretary of State, who touches everybody from the point where they're a child, when we're talking about bike safety, all the way up to them getting their licenses, it is important that we engage our young people in that process. That's why I was the first in this race to talk about creating 122 youth engagement offices across this state, giving our young people and young adults full-time year-round internships to get them civically engaged. I was the first one to say that, and it's important that we do that. But main thing, using that office, the responsibility of that voice to make sure that we are running a program and educating people.
All right, Clerk Valencia, we need to bring up some of the ethics issues that you face in this campaign. The Juneteenth campaign has pointed to 700 emails from your city account where your husband, Rayad Kazmi, a lobbyist, is referenced, or you're emailing him, including one email where you're asking a staffer, quote, when are you sitting down with Rayad, your husband? Did you blur the lines in your office between his lobbying practice and your duties as city clerk?
Well, look, my husband has never, I'm not the first woman running for office where I have to say my husband doesn't speak for me, nor will he ever. We have separate careers. And, you know, as I come into public office, I had some growing pains, and looking back, wish I would have been more careful with my personal and professional emails, but it's made me a stronger and better public servant. And as I move forward, I've been very clear that if I'm honored to be Secretary of State, my husband will not do any business with the state of Illinois. So there's not even a perception otherwise, period. And, you know, I think it's very, I think we know that Alexi Juneteenth, who's not here, like I am here ready to take any answers. I've been at every forum I've been asked to. Our opponent, Alexi Juneteenth, chose not to be here because he doesn't want to ask any answers to the tough questions about his past at Broadway Bank, where he gave sketchy loans to mobsters, or his time as, you know, our state treasurer, and he lost over $110 million in college fund savings, making Bright Star College Fund the worst in the nation. Still no answers there. Or when he ran for U.S. Senate and lost in a midterm Barack Obama Senate seat with all the money and endorsements in the world. Democrats deserve better. We deserve a candidate that's been there. He hasn't been around in 12 years and just popped up to run for this office, where I've been a fighter working for undocumented immigrants facing deportation, working with women in marches, trying to fight for our rights and our bodies. And, you know, I really think that Democrats deserve better. Secretary White has endorsed me, Governor Pritzker, Senator Durbin, Senator Duckworth, all have endorsed me because they know my character, my integrity. They know my heart and commitment to service. And they also know I'm the best candidate in the midterms to win this seat.
I want to bring up a couple of those emails. They pertain to a company called Ignite Cities, which your husband is a partner in. WCIA reported that you use your city email to promote a smart city project in the Illinois Medical District that could have benefited that company to the tune of $15 million in revenue. Did you coordinate with your husband or his business partner on that project at all? And we should mention that project never came to fruition.
It's absolutely false. That is absolutely false. And again, I will say that I have separate careers with my husband, period. And this is a false attack by my opponent, Alexi Juneteenth, to dirty me up because he doesn't have a record to run on. So he has to take down a woman of color. That's what this is. And he's not here, again, to answer any of the questions that we should be knowing about, who his clients were on Wall Street when he was an investment banker, you know, what he did when when he was state treasurer and he lost over $110 million in college savings fund program. Why should we give that another opportunity? And when he ran for U.S. Senate. So again, I'm here. I'm happy to answer any questions. especially about my ethics. I have nothing to hide.
And we do note, Clerk Valencia, you are here, and candidate Janulius is not here to answer these questions. So Alderman Moore, I'll pose a question to you. Clerk Valencia brought up Janulius's past with Broadway Bank, where he was a senior loan officer and a VP. He dealt with this during his Senate campaign in 2010, where there was allegations that he loaned money to mobsters. That bank shut down many years ago after the recession. Are these issues that voters should be concerned about?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the Illinois dark history of corrupt politics has returned to the Secretary of State's race. That's why back in 1997, I circulated petitions for Secretary of State Jesse White. I'm actually the only one in this race to get elected because that office was mired in corruption and scandal. The previous Secretary of State, he went to jail not for being governor, but for what he did in his previous position. And so it's important that this seat has
George Ryan, the former governor.
Absolutely. It's important that this seat remain a servant seat and not go back to being a political seat. The November election is critical. Ken Griffin is going to pump a lot of money into whatever Republican wins the primary. And at this point, I am the only one in this race that doesn't have those ethical issues that Ken Griffin can go after. And so the Democrats have a great chance of losing this seat if I'm not elected, because they're going to use that money as the commercials are writing themselves from the candidates. They're going to go even deeper, and we're going to be listening to commercials about scandals and emails and Broadway Bank instead of dealing with the issues of the people. And so it is important.
Clerk Valencia, I want to bring a piggyback on a point that David Moore made, and that is before Jesse White in his 24 years, this office was sort of a stepping stone to governor. Jim Edgar, George Ryan come to mind. Is this a stepping stone for higher office for you or not?
Look, Secretary White 24 years ago made history as the first African American to serve as Secretary of State. When I win this primary and general election, I'll be the first woman and woman of color to ever serve as Secretary of State. This race is much more than just about me, about Ana Valencia. This is about what I represent. This is about our young girls seeing themselves represented in government. And, growing up in Southern Illinois in Granite City from a working class family, first in my family to go to college, I have worked so hard to get where I am. And for women and women of color, the standards are different. The barriers are different. So I am breaking this barrier not for me, but for my daughter to see and other girls like Stephanie Diaz in Highland Park, a high school student interning in our office who is going to be first in her family to go to college too, so she can see herself represented in leadership. This is what it's about. So I'm just focused on the next 7 days. It has been a long 18 months. I'm very excited about the momentum we're getting. I'm very excited about ending this race on a positive note because we have worked so hard and so many people across the state have worked hard to make this a reality. Alderman
Moore, you do want to be elected here, although you are being outraised to the tune of 10-1 from Clerk Valencia, 20-1 by Alexi Janulius. Can you compete, and how come those contributions aren't going to you?
Can I compete? I am competing. So it's not can I compete? I am competing. And actually, based on your last comment, I am the only one in this race that said I'm not going to use this seat as a stepping stone. I would not be seeking another office like Secretary White. I would not be going looking to be your next senator. I would not be looking to be your next governor. This would be my last stop, so I can just focus on serving the residents of Illinois. And so I am the only one in this race who has said that, and that I would not be doing that. So when you talk about being outraised 20-1, that happened to me when I was running for alderman. I didn't have all the endorsements, I didn't have all the money, but people looked at my service record. It's a difference between being a public servant. It's a difference between being a millionaire, a political operative. I had to earn my way through. I wasn't appointed to a seat. I didn't have a big money to get to the seat. I ran for every seat, and it was the people who elected me. And that's why I'm able to serve the people, because I don't have to go back and answer to anyone. I just have to answer to the people, and the people are going to make that decision. So all that money, all those endorsements, at the end of the day, don't mean anything, because we've been across this state reaching people and touching people, and we're winning everybody. And a lot of people from every corner of the state will be victorious on June 28th.
All right, so 7 days till the election. We're going to have to leave it there. Our thanks to Ana Valencia and David Moore for joining us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paris. Thank you.
Thank you, Paris.
And don't forget, you can check out our 2022 voter guide to hear more from these candidates and others on why they want your vote. It's all at WTTW.com/voter guide. And we're back with more Chicago Tonight in just a moment, so please stay with us.
We've made it.
Justice Jackson's appointment to the Supreme Court provides a beacon of hope.
Black women are underrepresented. We still rise. We still show up for one another.
It's us investing in the next generation and giving them something to enrich the next generation with.
Tomorrow is the first official day of summer, and it's going to be a hot one. Temperatures are expected to hit 100 degrees. As Chicagoans plan for how they'll stay cool, many are frustrated the city's pools are not yet open. A lifeguard shortage has Chicago Park District pools closed until at least July 5th. And nationally, estimates are that 1/3 of the country's pools may not be able to open this summer. It has Chicago swimmers wondering when they can visit the city's pools. Here with all the details is Chicago Park District Superintendent Rosa Escareño. Welcome back to Chicago Tonight, Superintendent. Thank you for joining us. So last week, the Park District revealed that 91% of seasonal lifeguard positions are still vacant. That was last week. Is that still the case? How many positions are you still trying to fill?
Well, you said it best. There's a national shortage, and we are not alone in this problem. Right now, my hope is to have about 300 lifeguards to open an ample number of pools this summer. That doesn't mean all the pools, but 300 would give us an ample number to ensure we're in every community in some way.
And when you say ample, how do you prioritize which pools? How many is ample pools?
Well, again, I don't want to say because it's really about the numbers. If we get, every time we get a certain number of lifeguards, that will determine, every so many lifeguards, how many pools we can actually open. I will tell you that these efforts to recruit are really, really important. If we cannot recruit at least 300, the number of pools will probably be a very low number.
Superintendent, can you tell us, are any of the pools open at this point? And when is is July 5th still your estimated date for being able to open some?
Right. When we open for the summer, the pools are always scheduled to open around June 24th. We always open the beaches first as that initial step. Once all the kids are out of school is when we look to open the pool. So we delayed the pool opening from June 24th to July 5th. And why July 5th is that our day camps open July 5th. So we wanted to have that delay so that when we come out to the public and we can be much more predictable in letting the public know which pools will actually be open, assuming we have an adequate number of lifeguards hired by then.
And Superintendent, of course, some folks say that not everyone can access the beaches. They're not as close to some folks. The pools are more accessible. But there's also been concern from some aldermen, Southside 9th Ward Alderman Anthony Beal, voicing concerns that some neighborhood pools may not open at all this summer. Is that a possibility?
Again, this is why this campaign, which we started, well, first of all, it's going to be essential. We started the recruitment at the beginning of the year, like we do every lifeguard recruitment does not start in the summer. It actually starts at the beginning of the year. But in May, we ramped up that campaign and we realized that there was a national shortage. At that point, we put a lot of incentives in place. And then just recently, we amped up those incentives because there is a likelihood that some pools in some neighborhoods, depending on how many lifeguards we have or don't have, will likely not see all their pools open.
And so you talked about recruitment. Let's talk a little bit about why this is happening, Superintendent. We've seen one of the recruitment ads that the Park District is running. Of course, as you know, pools rely heavily on high school and college students to fill the role of lifeguards for the summer. And those are typically coveted positions. Where are those young people this year?
You know, I think there's several factors. As you've indicated, obviously there is a national shortage. That in itself is creating a lot of competition for jobs. So a lot of our young people that would traditionally be working at, here at the Park District are probably finding jobs that are paying much higher wages in other sectors. So that's number one. There's a lot of competition, not just between our industry and private sector industry. There's also competition between us and other private pools where there are memberships that are paid. As you know, most of our programs are very low cost, and for families that don't have money to pay for our programs, they are free. All of the pools that are open during the summer, it's free. And so we're competing with some of these private pool operators. In addition, the COVID impact is real as well. Many of our young people, we have feeder programs that we partner with the Chicago Public Schools. Well, our public school pools were open. Our lifeguards actually rely and train some of the high school kids coming through those pool programs to be our lifeguards. We usually get between 200 and 300 students coming right out of those feeder programs into our pool programs. Because of COVID, many of these programs were not fully operational.
And then, let's talk about some of the incentives that you're offering this summer. Yes. A $600 signing bonus. You've dropped the residency requirement that lifeguards live in the city, and also adding $500 bonuses to Park District employees who refer someone who successfully signs up for and becomes a lifeguard. Do you feel like you're getting more applicants as a result of these incentives?
We're hopeful. We're hopeful. We're pushing out social media. We're communicating with our partners. We always send information to our local aldermen, all of our community members. And so we're hopeful. We're going to be tracking these numbers in the next coming days. But our goal is to put as much effort here. We want to support our residents. We are not giving up. We're not giving up, and we're hoping for the best.
And of course, Superintendent, I'm wondering about the experience that the Park District has had over the last year or so, resulting in the resignation of several Park District employees as a result of the allegations of the sexual assault situation and how that was handled. Do you believe that any of that has been a factor in teenagers not applying or their parents not wanting their teens to apply for the job?
I've been in communication with parents. I've had lots of open dialogue and conversations. We've put a lot in place to ensure that our agency is leading a culture of respect, a culture where reporting these kinds of issues are being taken very seriously. And, we are a very transparent agency. We are putting a lot of additional supervisory efforts into all of our programs, specifically our aquatics program. And the parents that I've been talking to, they know all that we have done to protect all of our employees. We're leading with a culture of respect and accountability that will continue. And so I know that we've done a lot. We're doing all we can to embrace and expand our recruitment efforts and safety, transparency, respect.
And I'm sure
safety is a part of that.
I'm sure a lot of swimmers remain hopeful that they'll get to experience their neighborhood pool this summer. That's where we'll have to leave it. Chicago Park District Superintendent Rosa Escareno, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brandis.
And now, Paris, we toss it back to you.
Thanks, Brandis. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, want to help save a life? Donate blood. Banks say they're in need amid a severe shortage. Plus, hear about an effort to change who can actually donate. A look at why Chicago police officers make up the majority of COVID vaccine exemptions, more than any other city department. There's a shortage of feminine hygiene products on store shelves, how one organization is working to combat the issue. And after years of campaigning, Juneteenth is being recognized as a federal, state, and local holiday, why advocates say it's just the beginning. But first, some more of today's top stories. As we mentioned earlier, former Vice President Mike Pence was in town today criticizing President Joe Biden and touting a conservative economic agenda. Pence spoke at the University Club of Chicago and said he believes the economy is sliding backwards because of what he called, quote, oppressive taxation, tyrannical bureaucracy, and overregulation. But Pence did have a familiar prescription for the economy's woes.
First and foremost, we need to extend the Trump-Pence tax cuts that help create millions of American jobs and eliminate special breaks for liberal states that get rewarded for taxing and spending irresponsibly.
He also called for slashing government spending to help curb inflation and easing restrictions on energy producers. A Chicago-based developer reportedly has plans to develop hotel and apartment complexes close to where Chicago's new casino will be developed. Crane Chicago Business reports that Fulton Market-based developer Shapack Partners has submitted zoning applications to develop a hotel and a 600-foot tall apartment building with 1,100 units. The development would be along Grand Avenue between Des Plaines and Union Avenue on a site currently occupied by a shuttered Salvation Army store and donation center. Shapack also plans to build another 1,100 apartments nearby at the intersection of Milwaukee and Union Avenues and Hubbard Street. And as if you need to be reminded, the hot weather is back. CNN reports that in the coming week, about 70% of the U.S. population will see temperatures in the 90s, and almost 20% of people nationwide will experience temperatures greater than 100 degrees. Many major areas, including Chicago, might experience those temperatures near or above 100. It's possible that more than 100 high temperature records could be broken this week, mainly across the southern and eastern regions of the U.S. Really miss those pools right now. And now back to Brandis for a look at what's behind the blood bank shortage. Brandis.
Paris, factors out of our reach have caused everything from high gas prices to shortages of products like baby formula and tampons, and we'll have more on that coming up in a bit. But there is another shortage that we can do something about. It's the supply of blood that hospitals and their patients depend on daily. The shortage has also highlighted donation rules that critics call homophobic. Amanda Venicky joins us now with more. Amanda, how bad is the shortage?
Yeah, Brenda, it's because we hear about blood shortages from time to time, but Dr. Sally Campbell-Lee, she is the director of transfusion medicine for the University of Illinois Hospital at Chicago. She says it's never been as bad as it was throughout the COVID pandemic. She says things, though, have improved since earlier this year.
We're still short of what we need. And the difference being, most blood collectors like to have a goal of 4 to 5 days inventory on hand, and we're generally at 1 or 2 days.
There are a bunch of contributing factors during the pandemic. You had major bases for collecting blood closed. Now, with school backs, things have improved, though not totally. Offices also do drives, for example, and a lot of workers still aren't fully back. But also, now it's summer, and that is when donations perennially dip. People's routines are off during summer. They're taking vacations. Dr. Dan Waxman's vice president of transfusion medicine for Versity Blood Center, and he's looking ahead to the 4th of July long weekend.
We really want to be able to go into that 4th of July time period with more blood, because once we start getting under a 2-day supply of red blood cells, especially O negative, then it's like, okay, we've really got to encourage people to come in. And so we watch this by all blood types every single day.
Now, blood has a limited shelf life of 42 days. Doctors say, yes, it can be frozen, but it takes too long for it to thaw to be useful if there is an emergency. And blood is needed for all sorts of emergencies. It's got to be on hand for surgeries. It's needed for neonatal babies to help oxygenate their blood, for cancer patients, and for trauma victims every day, 24/7. Now, Waxman says that helping out by donating takes about an hour of your time.
The actual donation itself, 10 to 15 minutes. And this is really something that is a volunteer act, and it saves lives. It absolutely saves lives. If you donate today, by tomorrow, the next day, up to 3 blood products will be made out of that whole blood donation that can help 3 different patients.
but not everybody that wants to can donate. The FDA has regulations that all blood collection agencies must follow. So things like getting a tattoo could temporarily disqualify you. Also, males who have sex with other males cannot give blood for 3 months within that time of sexual intercourse. A restriction that University of Chicago med student Christian Carrier says is a sweeping generalization that wrongly excludes men who want to help.
By not allowing these people to donate, I think it also puts a little bit of social stigma on the community as well. And I think that by having this rule, it kind of looks at the queer community and says, we don't trust you enough to be able to donate blood. And although there are so many queer healthcare providers and that are trusted to do all this amazing work for patients, they can't do something as simple as donating blood.
That cooling off period is actually significantly shorter than it used to be.
Prior to 2008, men who had sex with men even once since 1977 were essentially permanently deferred. In 2018, it became a 12-month deferral, and in 2020, it was reduced to a 3-month deferral.
Still, Dr. Shikha Jain, she's a hematology and oncology physician at the University of Illinois Cancer Center here in Chicago, says the rule is outdated. She says it was made early in the AIDS pandemic, but she says medicine knows a lot more about HIV now, plus all that blood that's been donated gets carefully screened. She says the blanket ban results in more prejudice than it does in protecting those receiving transfusions.
When you fill out a questionnaire to donate blood, it shouldn't be who you are sexually active with. It's how many partners, it's how often, is it protected or unprotected? Those are things that I think are more important.
There is a chance that that ban could be lifted coming up in the future. The FDA is doing a study researching this and other blood donation qualifications. And Dr. Campbelline is waiting for those results.
We need to focus on is making sure that we have an adequate supply of blood that is safe for our recipients.
University is hosting a blood drive on Wednesday at Northwestern Hospital. A list of places to donate. Otherwise, a full, really long list is at aavv.org. That, by the way, stands for the Association for the Advancement of Blood and Biotherapies. You have to be in Illinois, age 16, with your parents' permission in order to donate blood. And then there is no maximum age. Dr. Waxman says he knows of folks who donate into their 90s. He does, however, recommend that you go after having had some food and, of course, hydrated. Brandis, back to you.
A lot of stuff to keep in mind, Amanda. Thank you. And now to Paris for a look at COVID vaccination and exemption rates for city workers. Paris.
Thanks, Brandis. A WTTW News analysis finds that when it comes to COVID vaccinations for city workers, the Chicago Police Department has double the number of exemptions than any other city department. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more. So, Heather, you got a tally of the final exemption list from the COVID-19 vax for all the city's 31,000 employees. What does the overall picture look like?
Well, nearly 8.3% of city employees citywide will not have to be vaccinated against COVID-19 after submitting and getting a request for an exemption approved. Now, the Chicago Police Department makes up about 40% of the city's workforce, but accounted for nearly 69% of all vaccine exemptions that were granted, a huge number.
And we know the whole legal fight here between Mayor Lightfoot in the city and the FOP President John Catanzara played out in the courts. So how does the number of exempt police officers compare to vaccine exempt employees from other departments?
Well, nearly 14% of all Chicago Police Department members have been granted an exemption from the vaccine. And that is compared with the Chicago Fire Department, whose union also sued the city. Only 7% of the Chicago Fire Department is exempt from the vaccine, and no other department comes anywhere close to either of those two departments.
And we know that there are two reasons for an exemption. One is religious, one is medical. How did that break down for police officers?
So the vast majority of all vaccine exemptions granted citywide were based on religious objections. And that was particularly true for the Chicago Police Department, where 98% of all granted vaccine exemptions were based on religious objections, even though the Chicago Archdiocese has forbidden its priests and pastors from signing attestations that the vaccine violates Catholics' religious beliefs.
And Heather, very quickly, we know that the mayor threatened to withhold pay from police officers that didn't comply or even terminate. What's the status of discipline here?
Well, only 6 officers are being disciplined right now by being in a no-pay status for failing to comply with the vaccine mandate. And no officers are facing discipline at this point that could lead to their termination, even though, as I said, the final deadline passed nearly 2 months ago.
Seems like it was a long battle that both sides seem to want to move on from at this point. All right, Heather, thanks very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. And now to Brandis for a look at the recent shortage of feminine hygiene products. Brandis.
Paris, that's right. The latest shortage to be felt across the country is affecting about half of the population. People who menstruate are scrambling to find tampons and sanitary pads, as manufacturers say securing the cotton and plastic used to make these products is, quote, volatile. A raw materials shortage plus staffing challenges have caused prices to increase as much as 10%. Even nonprofits that typically supply these products to women across the country are struggling to find them. Joining us now to talk about the impacts of this shortage is Dana Marlowe, founder and executive director of the organization I Support the Girls. Dana, thank you for joining us. So let's talk about this shortage. Your organization is seeing an increase in demand because of this. What kind of an increase in need are you experiencing?
Thanks so much for having me, Brandis. The demand has been felt by I Support the Girls on both the individual front and also the organizations that we serve. So we're kind of a B2B model nonprofit usually, where as a nonprofit, we are supplying other social service agencies and 501c3s with tens of thousands of tampons and pads and other items that are really focused on dignity for women and girls and menstruators in need. And our demand has absolutely spiked. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw an increase in 35% for menstrual products. And then it kind of leveled off about a year ago, back to where we were pre-pandemic times, but still high and elevated. And we're back again, very, very high. I think we're like around 25% increase in demand, specifically for tampons from all over the country. So from definitely Chicago and Chicagoland area, as well as Arizona and Rhode Island, Florida to Texas. It's being felt everywhere.
We're also seeing, of course, this increase in price for feminine hygiene products, upwards of 10%. What kind of impact does that have on people and organizations that couldn't afford these products as it was?
So it's even more than 10% in some places. I personally started going out and I saw regular packages of tampons on Amazon, and I took screenshots because it was mind-blowing, for $45, $55, $65 for the same box you might buy at your local pharmacy for like $8, $9. So price gouging is still happening, and even locally, it's definitely 10%, 13, 19% up, depending where one is in the country, which is like impossible. How that's happening for something that's so essential around dignity is mind-blowing. But the impact that that's having on folks who already struggle to have access to these basic needs, it's making these items more out of reach. And in 26 states, there's already a tampon tax or a luxury tax on menstrual hygiene products like tampons. And they're not covered by SNAP programs or WIC programs. And so folks already have to make really hard decisions. Do they want to buy that package of tampons or that sandwich? And these are really hard choices.
Well, and sometimes that decision might be to use the product longer than it's suggested in an effort to stretch the use of it. Why is that dangerous?
Well, for starters, I mean, with tampons, right? I mean, on every box of tampons, there's information about toxic shock syndrome. You don't want to keep a tampon inserted into one's body for too long. But there's also other risks going on when you don't have access to tampons, if that's the preferred menstrual product for a person who's managing their menstrual health. And that's scary too, because they're taking pads and opening them up and trying to like roll the cotton into a makeshift kind of tampon to get a few of them. That's also dangerous. But the real danger is from folks that I talk to that are women experiencing homelessness who are using ripped up cardboard, the insides of mattresses, torn t-shirts, ripped up sheets, and wadded toilet paper, anything to make do.
The absence of dignity that you've mentioned a couple of times. What kind of changes would you like to see on a legislative level that might make an impact when it comes to this? It's something that's been referred to before as period poverty.
Yeah, no, period poverty is absolutely real, and menstrual equity is also a very common term in our space. I would love to see members of Congress really looking at how they can make some kind of any national legislation to provide free menstrual products, pads and tampons in public spaces, just like we expect toilet paper in the US. It would be great to be able to have access to pads and tampons in public libraries, in public schools, in correctional facilities, in city halls, places where you could go and expect to see toilet paper. We would also love to see menstrual products and would love some national legislation out of Capitol Hill. On a state legislature level, on those 26 US states that still have a tax on menstrual hygiene products, deeming them like a tampon, like a luxury tax. I'm holding up tampons. These are not luxurious. These are a necessity. These are essential. And I would love to see all of those states, those 24 plus states that still have a tax on tampons. I would love to see those state senators remove and repeal that tax. So then it makes it that much slightly more affordable for menstruators in need to be able to access these essential items.
Dana, are you seeing, with this shortage, are you seeing people turn to alternative products?
We have. So we, at I Support the Girls, in addition to donating tampons, we also donate millions of pads, maxi pads, liners, menstrual cups, period underwear, menstrual discs, and reusable pads. So everything from reusables to other alternatives. We regularly donate those out too. But we saw the writing on the wall, Brandis, back in January, February, when our numbers of donations coming into us were significantly lower than last year and the year before. And it's gotten worse over the last 5 months where we've tracked it. And we've donated out 60% less tampons than 2 years ago and over 50% less than last year.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. Dana Marlowe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, the fight to recognize Juneteenth as an official holiday. That's a conversation that first aired on Chicago Tonight Black Voices Juneteenth special. But first, a look at the weather. After years of advocating and campaigning, Juneteenth is being recognized as a federal, state, and local holiday for the first time this year. The day recognizes June 19th, 1865. That's when the last enslaved people in Galveston, Texas were freed more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. The effort to make Juneteenth a Chicago holiday started in 2019. Now, 3 years later, it's officially on the city's calendar, just like the 4th of July and any other major American holiday. Joining us now are two people who made that happen. Torrance Gardner, who helped draft Chicago's Juneteenth legislation, along with Alderwoman Maria Haddon's office, and Lucretia Burtz, founder and co-chair of the Black Remembrance Project. Welcome to Chicago Tonight Black Voices, and happy Juneteenth to both of you. Lucretia Burtz, let's start with you, please. You and the Black Remembrance Project, you kicked off this push to make Juneteenth a Chicago holiday. Why was this cause so important to you?
This cause was important to us because in 2019, when we kicked off this campaign, it was a historic period for Black people in this country. 2019 marked the 400-year anniversary of, Black Americans, Africans being brought here as slaves, 1619. It also represented the 100-year anniversary of the Chicago 1919 race riot, and as well as the 50th anniversary of Fred Hampton's assassination. And when we realized that, when we realized that 2019 was such a historic year, we said that we need to do something to recognize the lineage of, Black American descendants of slavery.
Torrance, for you, when the Black Remembrance Project approached with this initiative, approached Alderwoman Maria Hadden's office at the time, why did you want to take it on?
It, to me, was something that was long overdue. African Americans' contributions to the city of Chicago should never be overlooked no longer, and it has been overlooked for far too long. So to me, it was simply the right thing to do, and it's also something that I felt in my bones that if we did not do this, then it showed that we couldn't even get a holiday in recognition, let alone the other needed solutions to our problems in our Black community that we still need to get resolved. So the holiday, to me, something that should have just been done regardless, but it was something that I felt much joy in taking on, along with my other folks who helped join along, and it was something I think our ancestors would be very proud of.
Lucretia, you all started this obviously in 2019. Do you think the summer of 2020, what impact do you think that had on furthering your cause?
I think the summer of 2020 had a huge impact on our cause. That was the year that George Floyd was, assassinated by police. I think that the uprisings really helped to put attention on the Black community. And even before George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, I think we were still kind of gaining momentum from that as well. There was a whole new generation of activists that were born from Black Lives Matter, myself included. And so I think that had a tremendous impact on Juneteenth. I think, for me personally, as someone who had been organizing around police accountability issues, I saw Juneteenth as an opportunity for us to think beyond just that and start to envision the world that we want Black people to live in, right? A world where Black people are truly liberated. So I think that it meshed well with Juneteenth, the uprisings in 2020.
Now, during a city Juneteenth event earlier this week, city leaders recognized the accomplishment of designating Juneteenth as a holiday, but said that there is more work to do. Here's a bit of what they said.
We're 246 years into the American experiment, and we're not done. And I think that's what Juneteenth means to me. It's a reminder that we're not done.
And though slavery might have officially ended in 1865, as we all know, its effects are still very much present, as we are dealing with the ripple effect and the vestiges of the underlying problem, which is not seeing Africans and Blacks as real people deserving of the full rights of citizenship in this country. This continues to be a sin that we must eradicate if we're going to ever be able to move forward.
Torrance, do you think that the acknowledgement of Juneteenth could also strengthen other racial equity efforts?
Most certainly, and honestly, that's the push that we, meaning Lucretia and I and Alderwoman Hadden and organizers, desired. I think there was a notion when it passed last year that the holiday, why do we need a holiday? Is that all we got as a Black community holiday? And that's actually the ironic part to this story, is that we wanted Juneteenth to be a testament to move things forward, a catalyst to bring folks together. And through Juneteenth, there's an opportunity to further, again, solve those issues that we still have not resolved in our African-American communities. So Juneteenth is a beginning, and Juneteenth should be utilized as a way to further build onto more movements that I foresee coming. And honestly, what Lucretia said, Juneteenth's victory is partly predicated on the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. I don't know if we would have gotten Juneteenth accomplished without the movement that occurred post that murder.
Lucretia, you were also part of a coalition focused on keeping companies from monetizing Juneteenth. We saw this with corporations like Walmart and Dollar Tree creating Juneteenth-themed products. Tell me about that effort and what it is you're trying to protect.
Well, as a Black American descendant of U.S. chattel slavery, I believe in being a good steward of Juneteenth, making sure that people who are trying to take part in the holiday don't, monetize or profitize off of it in a way that's disrespectful to the lineage of, American slavery descendants. I think that if corporations want to participate, they should be doing it in a way that is respectful to the actual people and the groups that this holiday is set upon, which is, Black American descendants of slavery. And, we're trying to start a conversation about corporate responsibility as well as equity. If you're going to take part in, doing something around Juneteenth, that particular group, even for any holiday, for any cultural experience, whether it be Cinco de Mayo or, any indigenous holiday, those particular cultural groups should be centered in the products and the branding and every part and every aspect in the ways that those corporations participate. So we're trying to do our due diligence to hold corporations responsible so that they don't do anything that's disrespectful to the particular cultural group, in this case, Black American.
And Lucretia, sorry, we've got about 15 seconds left, but I want to know what's next. You've accomplished this. What's next on your agenda?
What's next on my agenda is reparations. I'm a reparations organizer, and I'm trying to make sure that we can push forward to get some of the changes that some of the legislators talked about, the flag raising.
Okay, more to come. I'm sure we'll talk to you about that further down the road. Lucretia Burtz and Torrance Gardner, thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Monday night. Please join us tomorrow night live at 7. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe and cool, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.